Hello everyone, same place, uploaded at a different time, obviously because you can't have two videos posted in a row. But this one is on reflecting about childlikeness. So I'm reading bits and pieces of Father Jacques Philippe's book on Saint Therese. It's called The Way of Trust and Love. I don't know if it's mirror flipped on the camera, but if it is, sorry. But you can unflip it and you can try to look it up. Anyways, I have been reflecting recently a lot on my thesis that I just wrote. I wrote on the silence of God, but I took it more in the direction of asking whether or not God is a sadist, to put it very bluntly, and boom, in your face. And I take a very existentialist route when it comes to this question, because for me, I wanted to, in a sense, test the limits and test the boundaries of, like, philosophically, what does the question of suffering imply and God's silence imply? And so, yeah, as I said, it's a very existentialist route. It's like making the problem as super big and as super intense as possible. But in the end, I guess in my thesis, I didn't come to a satisfying answer. I think the process was very satisfying to be able to test the limits and say this is where, in regard to silence, like, this is where, like, the human heart is limited, right? But also at the same time, it still doesn't answer, like, a lot of those fundamental questions. And so I was reading with Father Jacques Philippe during my trip, and in this section he's talking about trusting the Lord more. And he had this line that just jumped out at me very profoundly. And so the context is that he's talking about Francisco and Jacinta. And so for those who aren't Catholic or don't know, Francisco and Jacinta are two Catholic children saints that were beatified. They were beatified May 13th, 2000. And Father Jacques Philippe has this really profound insight on how what God has hidden from the wise and the prudent, he has revealed to little children. And here I feel like he's saying that in order to really trust God with these big questions, we have to trust God in this very childlike way. And it doesn't really make sense either, because yeah, with, for example, like, this question, like, is God a sadist? Like, really, like, this question is doubting the goodness of God, or challenging it. And it's really scary to trust a God who has all this power, who has, St. Teresa, or St. Faustina talks about God has the power to keep your soul in darkness if he wants to. And so even that seems a little bit sadistical, if you think about it a little bit more. And it's like we still trust him despite that power, because our human tendency of, seeing the corruption of power is to turn away and say, ooh, like, why would I want to trust my life to someone who has that, who can abuse it? And in the times where God sometimes keeps us in darkness, can often seem that way. And honestly, I can't give everyone an explanation why God gives their own darkness. But I'm not saying that, I don't know, in some ways the childlike answer can be a little bit of a cop-out. But I feel like there is something very deep and simple in this childlike trust, despite, like, this massive question. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of like what has been on my mind. So, yeah. Thank you for listening.